the second styling of a spruce. Almost exactly 2 years ago I created this spruce bonsai from a Christmas tree. It doesn't look like a bonsai anymore, it's much more again like a Christmas tree. Let's fix this. I left the wiring on too long, so there's a lot of scarring now. Well, I now need to look at this deadwood. I need to work it down and see how big of a gin I want here on top. Thin out all these branches, position them and wire them again. Now, at the moment it's cold. It's about -5°C, so I'm not going to be doing a lot of work on the branches today. I'm just going to work on the deadwood. And then in a couple of days, when it thaws out again, I'll work on the wiring. And most of this wire I can probably just remove by uncoiling it. It is fairly thin. This is 1.5 mils of aluminium. That comes off quite easily. Here, I think you can see it as well. There's a bit of scarring from the wire. I don't like working with gloves, but to be honest, it is just too cold wearing nothing on my hands. Oh, you get the drift, right? Just removing the wire from throughout the tree. The tree is now completely unwired. It is all standing by itself, but do not let the shape now deceive you. Particularly with Picea, you know that once spring hits, it will start pushing all these branches back up. So I'm going to need to wire out all the branches, including the mains, completely again. I'm going to coil the wires in the opposite direction of the original wiring. So to reduce the scarring, I'm going to use copper this time. I hope that this time I can leave the copper on for 2 years. So thinner wire, less visible, and therefore it looks prettier. If we look here at the top of the tree, this cut-off stump is very, very obvious. It's not tied off completely. There's still some growth here. But I'm going to have to debark it all the way to the base. And I want to avoid removing these little branch stumps as much as possible. The more I leave on, the more natural it looks. I'm doing this in winter, even though in spring it would be a lot easier. Then there's a lot more sap in it. But that is also the reason why I'm doing it in winter. Right now there's less sap, and therefore hopefully also in spring I'll get less of this pine resin all over the tree. It's not pine resin, Jelle. It's spruce resin. It will bleed, but maybe a little bit less if I do this now. And I'm putting this down quite substantially because I really want this tree to have a dead part on the main trunk. Tricky is, I don't want this to be completely frontal, so on this one I want to go more on the side. Now this is very long, no taper, and it should be brought back quite significantly. And here there are a few little branch stumps, which I think I could use for that. Now I'm not just going to cut it off low and say I'm going to go here. Instead I'm just going to split this into multiple smaller sections and try to break them out. That way you get the natural fibers in the deadwood. You emphasize what the tree already has grown. Now this is of course perfectly cylindrical without any structure, and what I've been doing up here is just with my pliers pulling little sections out to create a little bit of a interesting 3D pattern in the trunk. But this rough work needs to be done before you do the wiring, so that you don't damage the branches or you don't move the branches that you've just positioned and wired. So this is why I do this now. And I can extend the whole dead part all the way up down here, so it really becomes a separate part of the trunk. Now this tree is a twin trunk, right? And the left one is significantly thinner than the right one. So as a result I want the left tree also to be lower than the right tree. Right now they're roughly of equal height. So I've been looking, and here there is this little branchlet that comes up with a nice little side branch. And in the back, which you can't see, is another small side branch going up. So I'm thinking about removing this completely. And in fact, I'm not just thinking about it. Right. Now this one can come up, this one can come up, this one goes down. And with that, I think this is a reasonable height distribution of these two. Then this I'm going to keep at this height here. These branches are going to come down a little bit more around the deadwood, so that it really fills this space, and then I can build the rest of the tree with all these branches here. And then in a day or two, when it has defrosted and the temperatures have come up, or when I've decided to move into the heated shed, I'll wire this out. But these are not pretty. Probably have to cut them back and use little side branches to redevelop these branches. Or just accept this is not going to be an elegant tree. Sometimes you just shouldn't work on your trees. I wasn't feeling all that well yesterday and I wanted to continue with this tree, and I broke this branch. I don't think it's broken completely through, but it has a massive big crack there, so I'm fully expecting this to die off. If in a few months this branch dies, at least now I know why. I've wired this branch, I've given it a little bit of wire, this one has been wired, this one has been wired, and then as I was positioning this, it broke, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to give up for the day. Now, let's get this baby wired. I'm using copper wire as said. I'm using quite thin copper wire. I hope it is thick enough for all these main branches, but I just want to get it as little visible as possible. I have not been paying attention actually yesterday on how I was wiring. Look at how ugly this wire sits on this trunk. I know, I should remove it, but because the branch is cracked, I am not going to. But this is really not how you should wire it. So, it is not my preferred tree. I am going to do this in a bit of a coarse way. It's not the right way. Now here near the top of the tree there's this branch with a lot of wiring damage. And the same goes for the one here in the back. I've been thinking this branch will cover any hole that I make, and these branches will fill this hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all the foliage. I'm going to debark this branch. I'm just going to make a gin out of it. And that also aids in giving the tree a little bit of an older look. But it also fixes my challenge what I'll do with this massive wire damaged branches in this tree. Let's not mix it up, let's do this and not that one. Already during the original styling I said that I was leaving on too much, and now that this is the second styling, this is a good time to do this work. By squeezing the bark, usually you can separate the bark from the branch underneath, and then it's fairly easy to get the bark off. I'm afraid that right now that is not the case. It is however winter, so the bark is still on quite tight. So let's see how this goes now. So I have to do it the slow way. So far I've only taken out very little. I have wired out pretty much most of the main branches, so the primary branches, the branches that come from the trunk and really form the basis of the tree shape. But all this smaller stuff has not been wired. And before I do that, I really want to trim back, because on the one hand there's branches that have really outgrown the space that they really have. For instance, a branch like this one, right? You see all the surrounding branches are much shorter. It doesn't have a lot of inner budding. There are some other side branches next to it, and I can just remove this completely. But this is an exception. In most cases, I am just looking at branches like this. Now, this branch sticks out a lot more than the rest. It's longer, there's a lot of side branches, and this is effectively a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-way split. So this first one I can remove completely. Then the question is, what do I want to do with the rest of the branch? Now, these two come from the same position, and then this one as well, but this one sits a little bit further back. So I can decide to remove one. In this case, I'm just going to remove this smaller one. This one, if you look carefully, you see there's a bud there, there's a bud there, there's a bud there. further along the back I don't see any other buds, so I can go back to this pair of buds here. And I've shortened this one. Same here. Do I have a side bud here? Yes, there's a side bud here and there's a side bud there, so I can remove the terminal, reducing it. Here you see a whole cluster of buds. There might be more buds along it, but at least there and there's a small little buds. And now I've got a two-way split. This one has a two-way split and that one has a two-way split. These I can wire out and this I can wire down. Remove these needles that I've squashed a little bit. And then I can go to something like this and here do the same thing. Prune back to a little side bud. Here there's a whole cluster of buds and there's a little side bud below it. So what I'm doing, I'm trimming off all these terminal buds wherever possible and leave just the double buds in there. That way leading to bifurcation. Now I have this whole branch here. I'm removing this all the way here to the first buds at the base of the branch, so that these buds can start popping in spring. This one also to the base. Now I still have the same bifurcation, but it's a lot shorter. And these I'll just leave in place. And with wire I can now position this in there. This is the way I'm going to have to go through the whole tree. And in practice I'll do this on a per branch basis as I am wiring it as well. So this is actually not a right example, because I'm doing it at the spot where I'm not wiring yet. Because I'm going to wire all the way down there. And this is a nice branch with a lot of bifurcation already. But also here this is a trifurcation. Which one I'm going to remove? Well, I'm going to remove the one that's the longest with least side branches. That's this one. Now this doesn't have a lot of growth that I can cut back to, so I'm just going to use the whole thing. Here the same thing. 3 branches. I'm going to remove the strongest because I don't want a lot of growth here anymore. This is 2 branches, 1 branch, 2 branches at the end, a dead section. This is a cluster of branches. And what do I do with the cluster? Well, I look what is the source of the cluster. And in fact I've got a branch here, then I've got a 3-way split, another 3-way split. With this 3-way split I'm going to remove the middle. That's the strongest. Here I'm removing this one because it doesn't have other side branches. And this one at the end I'm looking for the terminal buds. There's a 2-way split and then the rest. So remove everything but the 2-way split. And this one, can I cut it back? Well, there's one bud here that I could cut back to. Just like that. Here, another 3-way split. Remove the middle one. Well, it was a 4-way split. Remove this one as well. Now this is very close to ready for wiring. Now for the wiring I'm using very, very thin copper wire. And as per usual, right, you just start at the branch, just wire it. In this case, I don't think I'm going to wire all the small branches, so I'm just going to wire these main branches here around parallel to the existing wire already on the branch. And then just follow towards the thickest side branch, wherever possible. And here I should actually use even thinner wire to spread these out. Now here I have another nice little side branch that can use a little bit of wire. So let's go up. Try to avoid popping off any buds. And this can then subsequently go up, around, and grab this side branch. Not perfect, but it works. And this I can now set. This I can set, and if I'm careful, I can even set the small one here, even though it's not wired yet. This has not been wired. I actually want to cut this back. So I will at some point have to come back to all these branches, because this is also quite long. I have a lot thinner copper wire, but I need to get it first. Then here I have a small branch that I can wire with this wire. There we go. and up and over onto this one. And this way you can quite quickly wire out the whole branch line. And when I say quite quickly, normally if my hands weren't frozen, you could do this sort of work in an afternoon or so for this tree, the full restyling. And now that this is completely wired out, I can start putting some shape in these branches and trying to get the foliage in a somewhat aligned state. I try to get these branches to sit in roughly the same plane wherever possible. I hope that if you look from there that you can actually see that these branches are slowly starting to align and come together. Something like that. Now up to this one. Right, this first branch is wired and positioned, and it is now in 1, 2, 3 layers. Basically there's nothing in between, nicely laid out. And this way I now have to wire out all of these branches. Basically just following exactly the same process. I go take this branch, this looks very ugly now, and I take my scissors and I start thinning it out. Might decide to remove this completely, or I might decide I'm going to bring this down in here and fill this space here in the back, and then have one pad and make this all into another layer right here in the back. And then I'll go to the other side and do the same here. 1 layer, 2 layer, the 3rd layer with this one as well. Just stacking the layers of branches on top of each other. Working from one branch, this sets the rhythm, this sets the angle, this sets the space, and the rest just follows. It's just a matter of doing exactly the same thing over and over and over again. But it's starting to cool down, the sun is going down. I'm going to find myself a cup of tea and continue this tomorrow. Right. It's turned cold again, it's snowing outside, but I think this now looks really, really nice. So now all the branches have been wired out, thinned out, and piles of little branches have been removed. Every branch has its own layer, so there's nothing growing up or down. Everything is now laid out flat. That means that new buds can occur in the inside and start filling these pads more. And as these develop, you see what I do here? This is one level, this is one level, and then this makes one level, and that is all connected to this one branch here. Same here, this is a level and this is a level, all connected to this one branch here. Now I've not wired out all these fine branches, so probably over summer I will have to take some even thinner wire and wire these out as they will come up. But for now, my fingers were just too cold to do this fine work on it. And also, these main branches are the most important ones. The rest you can use pruning and later on wiring as well. I have made a dead branch here and a dead branch there, and I've worked on the deadwood. And the tops have now been laid out that this really is the main top of the tree, but this complements the whole line. It now, of course, does need a better pot than this. This is no longer a suitable pot for this tree. The tree is now elevated to the next level. That means that this pot also needs to be replaced. Now, as you're looking at this tree, you'll probably notice that not all the branches are in exactly the same profile of the tree. There's a gap here, which is dictated by this dead branch. Otherwise, it would have been filled up all the way to here. And the same here in top, you have a gap. And there is some space here, which is because these tops have died off. So yes, I could, of course, with branches start to fill this all up. But part of the story of the tree is, of course, some parts of the tree have died off. Next to this, if you look at a very old, mature, decaying tree, very often you see that canopies start to show gaps. So the whole story of the tree is this tree has some sections that have died off for one reason or another, some branches have died off, and therefore it is no longer in prime health. It has recovered because a new top is growing, the same here, a new top is coming up, but the tree does have some empty spots. So you have some very heavy, well-developed branches here lower down. You have some small branches in the top. I've taken out quite a few of the heavy branches that were sitting in this top, but also in that top. I've removed a lot of material, but that is all to convey this illusion of a very old tree that has been growing for a long time and is now starting to fall apart. So here you still see a stump of branch I cut off. There I cut something off. There I cut something off. So a lot of material has been removed in the styling. Here as well you see a branch that was clipped off. Here a branch was clipped off. And this is something you have to do. Always take out the heaviest branches as far back as possible and then use new younger side branches to rebuild your tree. So overall the whole tray has now one continuous shape. This is now ready to go back into the garden for the rest of the year, back into the snow. I do like the look of the snow on this tree. Quite pleased with this. Probably 3 years since I made this from a regular Christmas tree. So that is possible. Right, this was Jelle growing bonsai and the second styling of a spruce.